Today I am finally getting around to installing my new iDrive screen replacement with an Android device. I purchased the iNav one from 4x4shop.ca. Pretty decent site. I've seen them around for a couple years, so I thought I'd go with them. I'll show you the components that it brings here before we go over to the car and start the install. So obviously you have your main screen here. I decided to go with the bigger one. This is a 12, I believe 12.5 or 12.3 inch screen. It does have SIM card capability, 4G. So I've noticed probably one other YouTuber that went with the bigger screen. I personally wanted to try it out just because the majority of people try to retain that OEM look or just go with the smaller screen. So I wanted to personally try out the bigger screen. So moving along, we have, this is a GPS antenna for the Android interface. So this actually plugs in behind here. Pretty much if you're planning to use GPS on the Android system itself, besides the factory one or Apple CarPlay, which this does have wireless Apple CarPlay, then you would install this. I don't plan to do that. I'm gonna use my phone mostly for Apple CarPlay, which is one of the biggest reasons why I bought this. I will be installing this, which is wireless antenna for the radio. The reason for using this is to keep the unit up to date, obviously, and load up any apps and for any car in motion activities. I believe when you're tethered to your phone through this, you could probably still use all the apps on the radio, including GPS apps, without the GPS antenna. So I'm gonna put that theory to test once I get this on. But I don't really care for having offline GPS on this device. For that, I can just use the car's OEM if I ever wanted to do that, but most likely I'm gonna be on Apple CarPlay. So moving along, we have this connector here, one of the main connectors for the back of the unit. This is more for any kind of video, if you have like rear entertainment, or if you're gonna add a rear camera or front camera. I believe this will give you the capability to do that. We have mounting brackets. I'm not sure if I'm gonna need this. It does bring this housing bracket, so I gotta see if I'm gonna actually need this auxiliary cable, but I believe this does not connect to the new radio harness. This would have to go to your existing BMW aux, and then it's kind of just an adapter, an extender, whatever you want to call it. And here are your two USBs. Usually they recommend running these into the glove box, or if you want to take your center trim apart, you could probably run this into the center console armrest area. I don't know that I would need this, but yeah, I'm personally just gonna run them to the glove box. This kind of tells you, troubleshooting the screen sizing issues, which a lot of people seem to have. This is the main T harness, as they call it. So this is the trigger that changes the screen to the camera view. So you have those here. This is of course, if your car doesn't have a rear view camera, you would probably have to, I think you can purchase a camera from them if you wanted to add one to your car, or you would have to purchase your own. This is actually a speaker for the onboard GPS with this antenna, as I mentioned before. Basically, you kind of want to put this, if your intentions are to use the Android GPS offline, you kind of want to put this maybe under the driver side dash or somewhere you'll be able to hear. Pretty much all the prompts for the GPS are going to come out of this speaker as opposed to your car speakers. I don't know why that is. I would think even application audio can be filtered to the OEM speakers, but yeah, there you have it. I mean, you're going to need this if you're planning to use a GPS. I'm going to disconnect this because I'm not going to use this. I'm mostly going to be on Apple CarPlay, like I said, or the OEM navigation system. So let's head on over to the car and get this done. I won't be going through too much details of the install just because there's a million videos already on how to do this, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to point out anything I think could be useful for people, my personal opinions about some things, just go over my general overview of how the system works. Alright, so stay tuned for that. First things first, don't mind my messy trunk. You want to disconnect the battery and put that away, kill any power to it before you start taking things apart and disconnecting things at the front. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you guys at the front. Alright guys, so battery's disconnected. Well, pretty much we're going to be removing this whole trim here. I know the instructions show you removing the side panel over there, but that's again if you're going to use the GPS antenna and place the Wi-Fi antenna where they tell you to here. Me personally, I'm going to just leave the Wi-Fi antenna just behind the unit, maybe off to the side closer to the glove box. I don't really believe you need to have the Wi-Fi antenna up on the glass just because you're in such close proximity to it. It's not going to cause any real interference, but again, that's just my personal opinion, and we'll put that theory to the test later. So we're going to start by prying here, up here, and then towards the end there. You're going to want to be careful. Don't pull this trim and the vents and the button out all the way. Don't yank on it because you have to remove the connections from here, and there's 2 connections I believe for this. So once you remove this part, there's going to be 2 bolts here to disconnect and remove this whole part here, which will expose the main radio, and you're going to have 2 screws underneath the factory screen here, so you can be able to pull it out and disconnect it. So I'm not really going to show any of that. I might just do a time lapse and we'll get right to the next step. You're going to be taking out this main plug here, which is right here. So this has another locking mechanism, so you have to kind of get under it and pry it with something. I use this pick tool to get down kind of under it enough to just put tension on the locking mechanism, and it loosened up pretty easy. So now what we're gonna do here is these 2 green cable here are your fiber optic for the car. We're gonna remove those from this housing, and they are gonna go on the adapter harness that the new radio brings. Basically all we're doing is this harness here is gonna go to the adapter, and then the adapter has a harness that plugs back into the radio. Basically these fiber optic cables need to be directly connected to the radio, so all we're doing is just transfer these over. One thing to note is on the OEM connector, as you can see, it has a guide for the orientation of the wires, the plug. The new harness does not, so you want to make sure that you re-reference this last plug here where you took it out of, just to make sure you put it into the new harness the correct way, because you can easily flip the fiber optic cables. I don't know that really matters, but just something I noticed. Also down here, this one has a slightly bigger locking clip, so it kind of puts a little bit of pressure on this. So I had to actually disconnect this connection here, remove it, so I could be able to put this in and lock it. And then I had to kind of put my little pry bar in between the locking clip and this to kind of let it slide down and actually lock into place. So it might feel like it can't connect, or it might be applying a little pressure, but I think it should be good. I use my little pick tool and put it between the 2, and then push this down until it locked into place. Okay, another note before we move on and install the actual screen is this is where your vents go, remember that. So what I did was I went off to the side. There's a little retaining clip here. Just make sure it's up and out of the way from where the vents go. Alright, just another quick update. Initial thoughts about this piece, it does feel very kind of like light and flimsy, but I mean, it does have some kind of flexing there. The mounting hardware wasn't the best setup. I don't know if they might do some revisions to this, but I guess time will tell how this holds up. What I didn't like about the mounting brackets is that they have these very small, almost like watch like Phillips head screws, and I just don't know how long those would even hold up in an application like this. One thing I would probably be careful with, if you have kids that are inclined to kind of reach over from the back seat and try to, like, you know, touch the radio or try to use it themselves, they might kind of lean into it, and that might potentially either cause damage to this or break it, because it is kind of flexible. But I mean, we'll see once we put the screen on, and I guess only time will tell, but just something to think about if you have kids especially. But yeah, let's keep going. Trim and everything's back on. Initial thoughts on the fitment, it is pretty good. I mean, of course, if you do rock it or push against it, it's gonna move, but fitment is snug and actually looks pretty good in the car. The reach is phenomenal. All right, another thing I was kind of worried about, I wanted to see, was that center speaker, how it looks. I kind of thought the screen popped up a little bit more and might block, I guess, the acoustics or the usefulness of the speaker, but yeah, from my view, it looks fine. I went ahead and paired the Wi-Fi for the unit to my phone, and as you can see, Wi-Fi is on. It works seamlessly, connected right away, no issues there. And my theory was correct in that if I use the maps without the device's GPS antenna, just tethered to your phone or to another Wi-Fi device, you can actually get it to work, and it works just fine. I'm gonna test CarPlay and a couple other things, and yeah, let me know if you guys want me to do a follow-up video, maybe after a few weeks or a month of use, and just kind of see how it's all held up, or if you want to see my I guess my finalized setup in another video, including the MHD tuning, which I am planning to do a video on that, but I'm not gonna go into details about the setup here, just kind of tuning the car itself and my initial reaction. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and yeah, let me know in the comments below if you guys want to see some kind of in-depth setup that I do here for my driving. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.